All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sam Selby, and I'm joined up here by Libby Macchiolo, and we're here to present on MochaWorks, which is a company that's producing a suite of medical apps for healthcare professionals. To really get into the history of the company, I want to share a story with you that's told by Dr. Atul Gawande, a trauma surgeon who's authored a lot of books on the field of medicine. And in it, he talks about a night that he was in the ER, he's a trauma surgeon, and a patient came in with a stab wound. And everything was, business as usual. Surprisingly, these are pretty common in an ER. And then all of a sudden, the patient crashed and nearly died. And thankfully for the patient, they were able to revive him and he was okay. But everyone in the medical staff kind of took a moment and looked at each other and thought, well, what happened? Everything was business as usual. But it turned out that everyone forgot to ask, what was he stabbed with? And it's amazing that as complex as medicine is getting, sometimes something as simple as asking a question like this can fall through the cracks. Medicine, like I said, is becoming increasingly complex, and there's so many different staff members and steps that take place for something as routine as treating a stab wound. And so clearly something needs to be done.
So Samar mentioned Dr. Atul Gawande, and I want to read this quote. Intensive care medicine has become the art of managing extreme complexity, and a test of whether such complexity can, in fact, be humanly mastered. Dr. Gawande is a trauma surgeon in the ER, but he also is an author. He's written several books as well as a regular column for The New Yorker, where he looks at the state of American medicine and looks at what we can do to improve the state of American medicine. And the reality is that the complexity of scientific advancements has far outpaced the level and the standard of patient care that we're providing to patients on a daily basis. Dr. Gawande talks about how his mother recently had a total knee replacement. This is a fairly common procedure in U.S. Medical centers. About 600,000 of these are done every year. So a fairly common procedure, and as a physician who pays very close attention to the standard of care given in the U.S., he observed that his mother interacted with 63 different medical professionals during her time in the hospital. This includes physicians, surgeons, techs, nurses, and everyone in between. So what this number tells me is that there's an incredible need for standardization and clear communication in order to ensure that patients get safe, efficient, and accurate care. What we're seeing is that the medical system is broken. Like I said, science has outpaced patient care. We can cure cancer, we can prevent destructive diseases, but the reality is that when you go into an ER, you might have a very disjointed experience where you feel like there's not a lot of transparency into what your care and diagnosis actually is. So there's a really interesting history of companies that look outside their industry for solutions and for ideas on how to improve. Southwest Airlines very famously, when they were looking for ideas on how to turn their planes around faster, they didn't look to Delta, they didn't look to American, they looked to NASCAR. And they said, how do the pit crews turn the cars around as fast as they do? And they took a note from NASCAR, and they integrated that, and they now have one of the fastest plane turnaround levels in the industry. Irvine Hospital in India is a hospital that does tens of thousands of cataract surgeries every single year. The administrator of the hospital says that their competition is not other medical facilities, it's not other hospitals. Their competition is McDonald's. And the reason he says that is because McDonald's has achieved a level of standardization in both process and product that is pretty incredible on a global scale. Samar and I had a chance to travel to Tokyo last year with several of our classmates on the Global Leadership Program trip. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that we stopped into a McDonald's in Tokyo. We ordered Big Macs and fries, and everything from the taste of the product to the decor of the restaurant was exactly like something you would find in Dallas, Texas. So we were impressed and a little amazed that a company as large as McDonald's and a country as far away as Japan can give the same effect, give the same product, and give that level of standardization on a truly global scale.
So when thinking about lessons to be learned from McDonald's and lessons to be learned from standardizations, we thought, well, what hospital wouldn't love an extra $100 million, let's say, on their budget to be able to bring in these practices, to be able to add new hardware, add new training, and spend all this time to do that? Well, that's just not feasible. A lot of these hospitals are just like companies. They're cash strapped, they're budget strapped, and they're trying to make ends meet, especially with all the changing regulations constantly. So we thought, well, what we need to do really is find out what small steps can we take that have a big impact. And one thing that we're noticing in the market is that more and more physicians are showing up to work with their smartphones, specifically iPhones, and pulling them out before they go into patient rooms and looking up reference information or looking up quick charting information. And so these doctors are already using smartphones, over 50% in fact, as part of their daily medical routines. And we thought, well, that's kind of a cool idea. And even Apple, has taken note of this and even features a a page in their iTunes App Store that is specific for apps for healthcare professionals. And if you take a look at even just a small slice of what they offer, it runs the gamut from medical reference tools to patient imaging to records. The market is really kind of picking up. And so I remember very distinctly, knowing all of this, my friend called me and says, I really think that we can save lives with an app. And as we got talking some more, we realized that we really, that's something that's actually within our grasp. And so MochaWorks was created to, create and design a suite of apps that helps reduce the complexity, or rather address the complexity of everyday tasks in the hospital. I'd like to take a moment and just discuss the team that's tackling this. I'm actually very excited to be working with these individuals. I think we put together a really neat mix of both inside professionals, as you can see the two MDs that we have, Omar Alvi and Brielle Payne, as well as outsiders. Libby and myself, being in business school and having myself also worked on apps for the last 3 years. And then, of course, I have the distinct pleasure to work with Jason Rendell, who's now a really good friend of mine. I've worked with him for the last several years. Very talented developer and designer, and is just doing tremendous work with us so far. So I feel really lucky to be a part of this team, and I think that we can certainly tackle the problem together. I'm going to take a step through just a couple of the products. Notes is the very first one that we've actually completed developing, which is really exciting. We are uploading it to Apple as we speak. Jason's working on that right now. And Notes was born from this realization that Brielle would come back to her home, and she's wearing a white coat, and it was just filled to the brim with these loose sheets of paper with little medical scribbles on it. And I asked her, well, shouldn't that go into patient records? Don't you guys use Epic, which is a large EMR, electronic medical record system? She said, well, these notes really don't belong in the patient record. It's really just for me and my other med students and residents and people that I work with. And I thought, well, it's not a shame that when she goes home, the notes go with her and no one gets to take a look at them. And what happens if she loses some of the notes, as they're just easy to just fall through the cracks? So we designed MedNotes to be the first, in our opinion, first legitimate way to take notes on your iPhone. We have a built-in autocomplete with a 100,000 term medical dictionary. We have peer-to-peer sharing and a whole bunch of features that we think doctors and nurses will get a lot of benefit from. Next, of course, is Checklists, which we've begun developing, and we're really most excited about this one. This is what started it all in the stories that we've shared with you. Checklist is designed in a way to where, the cool idea is a doctor walks up, in an ICU where a lot of tasks are happening every single day for a patient. And before going in, can pull out his or her iPhone, take a look, what procedures have been done, what hasn't been done, and all of this is being updated in real time with the internet backend that we've designed. So that way they can give the best possible care in a very standardized manner across individual hospitals. And of course, there's many more opportunities, and all of these just feel like small steps. All we're really offering is an app on a phone, but by doing it in this kind of seamless way in a hospital, I think we can really make a big impact. Just to give you a few examples, one of the other apps on the horizon is a messaging app to replace the aging paging system that a lot of these hospitals use, and all of these would integrate with each other, so whichever app that you're in, you can access all the same information. So our business model, all of these apps are going to be released for free, which we think is really cool because huge built-in audience already, a lot of doctors and nurses with iPhones, and they get to try the app. We do actually have some in-app purchases, so it's really more of a freemium model, so there is some time for one-time revenue on release. But the real bulk of the revenue comes from the software as a service, the internet backend that we're going to sell, which appeals to hospital administrators so that they can get everyone on the same page. And so let's say a procedure has 10 steps and all of a sudden they need to add an 11th one. One change will get pushed out to hundreds of iPhones in their hospital, and now everyone's on the exact same page. And I think that kind of impact is really incredible.
So the initial target market is physicians and nurses. This can be everyone in 1 to 2 person practices all the way up to huge institutional hospitals. After that, we have a couple of markets that we're really excited about, the first of which is medical schools and teaching hospitals. There's a lot of competition to get into the best medical schools, but there's a lot of competition on the schools end to compete for the best students. One of the ways that a lot of schools are doing that is by working technology into the curriculum. A lot of schools are providing an iPad to all of their entering students, and then providing a seamless, integrated technological experience that brings the technology both into the classroom as well as the treatment experience. We're also seeing a lot of exciting developments in the way of corporate partners. A lot of Fortune 500 companies invest in the healthcare industry. They see it as a good humanitarian effort, so good PR on their end, but they also see it as smart business. There's a lot of money to be made in marketing to physicians, large pharmaceutical companies, and there's money to be made in fixing the broken healthcare system, and they really tap into that. The third that we're really excited about is clinics and NGOs. We love the idea that a physician equipped with an iPad loaded with the MochaWorks suite of apps could be dropped at a clinic virtually anywhere in the world and could be up and running essentially immediately?
So I just want to speak to our current status right now. We raised $34,000 in seed money from just friends and family in our own pockets. And with that, we've been able to develop the MedNotes app, which, as I said, is being uploaded today. So we're very excited about that. We're looking forward to how that release does and seeing it in the market. Checklist development has already begun. The really cool thing is that a lot of these apps share the same kind of design language, the same backend. So when one is completed, it's much faster to start turning around these others. And then we're seeking $175,000 in additional investment, and that's really just to continue funding the development of the suite. And specifically, the bulk of that is going to be developing the back end, because we believe that's really where the true magic of the suite comes together, and that's the offering. And so, to wrap up, medicine is becoming increasingly complex. Every single day, new advancements are made, new technologies are found out, and doctors who are already burdened with years of training have to learn yet another procedure and yet another thing to remember. And so we need to start thinking, how do we arm them to go and practice medicine in the best possible way, so that we, as maybe one day patients or having a loved one as a patient, can go in and comfortably know that a step will not be forgotten, that a note is not going to fall through the cracks. These are really important things as medicine becomes more complex, so that everyone's on the same page and everyone gets the care that they deserve. So this time I'd like to turn over to the judges for a question.
So the first app is the MedNotes. And is it used in patient care, or is this meant to be post-patient and I'm just speaking into a phone or doing something? It
can actually be used for both, to be honest. The way that I saw Brielle's notes and Omar's notes are kind of just, they'd leave the room and then they'd scribble a bunch of things to remember. So it'd probably be post, but in theory, if they really wanted to, they could pull out a phone, because a lot of these, when you go into a room, it's a team of individuals, and you might not be the one talking, but you're still taking notes. And so they could very rapidly type out these terms.
So that would make them subject to HIPAA compliance, correct?
Yes, and so we've researched into HIPAA compliance as much as we could. We have seen that there are a lot of other medical apps that are HIPAA compliant. In terms of the app itself being on the phone, since everything is stored securely there and it's protected by a PIN, I do not believe that we step on the foot of HIPAA, because the main clause for HIPAA with electronics is there any kind of measure being taken to prevent someone from picking up the phone and accessing that information? So it'd be the same, the way we think of it would be the same as someone grabbing her notes out of her white coat.
Doesn't have to do, but the back end side of that is how that record is connected to that patient for other record standards. So there's a huge integration issue there. I think you're
right. No, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question earlier. The MedNotes app is being released today. We don't think really, it doesn't really fall under HIPAA violations, because there is no backend right now. It's just stored on the phone itself. When we do release the cloud backend that stores all the information, we will of course seek HIPAA compliance and do everything that we can to make sure that we follow the rules.
But if I'm using something within my environment to store any type of information regarding a patient, it falls under the HIPAA controls. Right, but HIPAA controls, I believe, from my understanding, and I could need to research it more, but from my understanding is that if it's a note for yourself and no one else is seeing it, and you're doing measures to make sure no one else sees it, you're not violating HIPAA.
So it's a brave new world out there. You guys are absolutely right on that there is problems out there in this field. There are a lot of competitors doing all sorts of things on iPads, Dr. Chrome, and many others. And so it really is a hot area. It is also the Wild West in many regards, because these decisions regarding HIPAA compliance and the practice of medicine and so forth are all being found out about kind of not necessarily because others have done it and therefore I can do it too, but because somebody picks it up eventually and tries a lawsuit, and then you'll see how many are non-compliant. So to your point on storing data on a phone, I'm also not an expert on this, but it's right that you have to have some sort of an access control system. maybe a number combination could be that if it's not connected to the cloud. So HIPAA is not always that onerous. But forward going, there are a lot of things that you will have to sort out. And I guess one piece of advice is just because others are doing it does not necessarily mean that you can do it too without getting into trouble. And the whole mobile health area is basically finding itself. A lot of it is like fitness, health things, which are kind of okay, and then you get into possibly the practice of medicine when you get into decision-making tools for doctors, and that's where it gets dicey. Also, the definition of a medical device applies at some point, and there are guidelines on the on software as well. But so the area is very, very complex, but it is also rich with a lot of opportunity. I think if you continue to pursue this, you will find that you will definitely want to have one unique approach, like your notes software, and see if that gets adopted, and then go from there. Or find partners that are doing similar things that you can trade off with. There are actually in Dallas, we're very blessed to have a lot of very cool startups or larger firms that are in that field. And that's another way to break in as opposed to having to do it all by yourself, which is much more difficult. But that's a long answer to say there is quite a bit of risk, Joel. That is true. And even out there today, the apps that are out today, most regulatory consultants will tell you that they are of the opinion that many of them are actually not HIPAA compliant, or any of them skirt the law. And it's a function of who will go after who.
Right.
But the thing I warn you about is that you can get personally liable. It gets pretty nasty quick in that field. So it's a huge opportunity, and it takes people like you to tackle it. And all the things you've said about access for doctors are all true. There's a huge problem out there with getting information to all the healthcare professionals, how to share it. I know of a variety of startups that tackle individual aspects of that. And each one by itself can be a business. So even the notes-taking app here could turn out to be the business that you engage in. I guess that's the good news, because it's a huge market.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask you how you were going to create your checklist. I mean, you're going to engage a group of doctors to kind of create those, or?
Yeah, one of the partners, Omar Alvi, is actually in touch with a physician who works at his hospital, who's actually offered books on medical procedures that are accepted, and so we were going to get in a conversation with him. He's shown interest in helping us, so that's great. Once we start producing that app to ship, with that data, we'd certainly be much more serious talks with him about getting that to happen. The cool thing with the checklist moving forward too is ideally what we want is to be able to probably have some boilerplate lists in there, but the real power I think is handing it over to a hospital administrator who then in a web interface can add in their own checklist. What is their standard in a hospital, and have that be pushed out immediately to all the iPhones and iPads. So that way, while we might have an approach, obviously they're going to feel like they know best, and so we want to arm them with the ability to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not, that wraps up almost entirely our 2013 business